So, back in Danganronpa 2, who, of Chapter 1, 90% of the fandom's favorite character, Nagito, tried to kill someone, but however was unsuccessful and was almost killed by Teru, who ended up killing Tugami. This was one of the ones I've always wondered, so next to the other what ifs, I just thrown this one to the pile. And so, this is, what if Nagito was the Chapter 1 blackened instead of Teru? Now, most of chapter 1 is obviously going to end up going the same until we get to the murder. Now, we go to the question, who dies? Most of the fandom tends to say it would be Hajime because he was the closest to Nagito during the party, during the blackout, which, for starters, he's the protagonist and this isn't V3, so they're not just going to kill him off in chapter 1. And second off, I think Togami would have made more sense as he was under the table, so he was technically the closest, meaning I would pick him as the victim, as him being around for the rest of the game would have prevented a lot of the death and kind of ruined the story. Now the second problem is, what about Teru? Well, there are two things we could do with him here. First is he never sees Nagito putting the knife under the table, which I don't think would happen. And second, which I'm going with, is he sees Nagito doing it, and when Nagito starts doing his whole hope speech about despair and all of that, Teru wouldn't take it serious and would consider it more of a joke. So, for the most part, Chapter 1 goes the same, and in fact, the trial would just go shorter, with Nagito being caught as the killer, and Teru would more than likely felt somewhat of a guilt because if it weren't for him, then Tugami would have still been alive, and he could have kept action to his hands. He could have rat Nagito out, so yeah, it'd been an interesting little character development. But most part, chapter 1 goes the same. So, with Teru still missing his mom, he would want to kill still. As for who would likely be his target, with how he went after Nagito because he wanted to kill someone, it's safe to assume Fuyuhiko, as he was threatening to kill and making a lot of threats. In fact, he probably would have went by his threats with how close he was to taking Mahiru out. So, we kind of need a reason on why he would do it. Well, I mean, for starters, he wouldn't trust Fuyuhiko. A lot of freaking red flags. So now, with that whole thing, now, we get to this. How would he do it? Well, for starters, he is obviously going to follow him, to where Mahiru is, because this would obviously be the place where they'd meet up. Teru would probably take some kind of iron skewer or a knife of some sort, and before Mahiru could come in, Teru can take it out, and maybe just use Mahiru as his red herring for the crime, no pun intended like in the Leon video, and go to kill him. This would be close, running over, when Fuyuhiko turns his back to see it. Bam! Peko would come out of nowhere and smack not Fuyuhiko, but Teru in the head. This would honestly just go to how Chapter 2 went the original. It would probably have a mixture of a Chapter 4 from Trigger Happy Havoc vibes. It's more than likely would get Hyoko and Mahiru just throwing the blame at each other. But this chapter would kind of just be a mixture of both. So, yeah, that's Chapter 2. Now, the next motive is really a weird one, as Nagito doesn't really play a big part of this one. The only real changes is obviously that he did get the despair disease, so we need someone to take a spot. Now, with how the cast is going right now, it's obvious someone would say Mahiru would do it, because, Mahiru's in where Nagito's place would be. But, in my opinion, I think Hajime would be the coolest choice. Him being the main character would be an interesting scenario to get taken out, and have a temporary one be a cool idea. As for who would replace him, more than likely someone like Chiaki or Fuyuhiko. Fuyuhiko, with his character development, would make sense, or Chiaki, because she was the one who was technically the main character's sidekick at that point. But yeah, Hiyoko and Ibuki would still die to Mikan. But there's a possibility where, with Mahiru being around, she can take Hiyoko's spot. Personally, I would have this happen for Hiyoko to at least get development, so we're just gonna say Mahiru dies instead. It depends on what you feel is best, but my opinion, I'd have Hiyoko live for at least some kind of development for her. Now, this chapter does more than likely have some big changes, but we're gonna address those later. But we're gonna start with the big one is, well, I mean, Hiyoko being around means that she gets the strawberry room and Nagi and Hajime would have to get the grape room. I think I got it wrong. I don't know. It's been a while since I played Goodbye Despair. But back to the point, Nagito's room would now go to Hajime, and Hyoko's and Hajime's room would go to Hyoko or Mahiru, depending on who you're still going with here. So, for the most part, that whole thing would go the same, and Gundam would still kill Mechamaru, but the biggest change comes in the chamber room. Yeah, I can't avoid this big topic. Nagito's really important here, and someone would have to take a spot. As for who takes a spot, it's really weird. There's a possibility that Chiaki could do it, as if I remember her saying one time that she was gonna do it. I don't really know if anyone else would be willing to do it. Hajime possibly could have done it, but yeah, that's really all the changes. Minus from that, we still get a similar trial, but without Nagito backsassing Hajime, which I love that part. But yeah, same trial. Chapter 5 is literally just Chapter 6. Need I say more? Nagito not being around means that the Mastermind trial more than likely is rushed. And really, the trial would more than likely go the same, probably. Nagito didn't do too much crazy stuff, if I remember. Again, it's been a while since I've last played Goodbye Despair. So, you can kind of remind me of what important stuff he does do in Chapter 6. We more than likely might get the Nagito Izuru memory thing, but it could just have someone else replace Nagito. I mean, it's possible. It could be anyone at that point. But yeah, most of the part, this killing game kind of goes the same. Chiaki's reveal as a traitor in the Mastermind trial would honestly have worked. It'd be an interesting twist. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. The only big changes would be that the possibility of not only 5 but 7 survivors, with Chiaki and an extra other being Hyoko or Mahiru, with whatever floats your boats. I personally go with Hyoko for obvious needed development. So, yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Peace out.